Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to FACT Day 2 afternoon sessions. My name is Sewon Chung, and as Jeff mentioned, I'm the head of digital content and initiatives in the curatorial department at M+ in Hong Kong. It's my pleasure to moderate today's panel, Perspectives from Asia and the Pacific. So we are here in a 4K cinema, diving deep into technologies that are rapidly transforming how we make, experience, and understand culture. And today, I'd like to start by grounding us not in tools, but in people, artists, engineers, cultural practitioners, and communities who are actively reshaping what creative technology can be and who it can be for. So across East Asia and the Pacific, we're seeing a surge of practices that move beyond just spectacle towards systems thinking, cultural accountability, and embodied experiences. Artists and technologists, like the ones will be on the panel today, are working with algorithms, animatronics, blockchain, indigenous knowledge systems, and scientific research, not as ends in themselves, but as critical instruments to imagine alternative futures. So this panel brings together three distinct yet deeply connected perspectives, and we've been discovering how deeply connected these perspectives really are on exploring transformation, and we'll be bringing a speaker from Japan as well as New Zealand, and then myself from Hong Kong. And for those of you that may not know much about Hong Kong or M+, I'll do a very, very brief introduction of myself as well. So M+ is a global museum. Let me make sure this is playing. Oh, it is. Okay, great. It's a global museum of contemporary visual culture in Hong Kong. We're located in the West Kowloon Cultural District, which is along the waterfront of Hong Kong. And I would say it's one of the most ambitious cultural institutions to emerge in Asia in the recent years. We have a collection that spans visual art, design and architecture, moving image, and Hong Kong visual culture, with a strong emphasis on perspectives from Asia and its diaspora. So I usually say it's one of the few museums in the world where you can see a sushi restaurant, literally from Ginza, to a capsule apartment, also from Ginza, inside the museum alongside artworks. So at M+, we approach digital and technology practices not as a separate category, but as integral to contemporary visual culture. It's embedded in how artists, designers, filmmakers, and communities think, make, and imagine. And my role is quite unique in that it sits in the curatorial department, and I also think about how digital infrastructures, platforms, and audiences shape curatorial practices and how institutions can engage technology critically, ethically, and creatively, both inside and outside of the museum. As you can see, some of the interactives that we produce for exhibitions. And what I mean by outside the museum is the very building of M+ is actually a digital canvas. The facade is one of the largest LED screens dedicated to art. No commercials, still yet, we're holding strong. And we commission unique works to be displayed on this wall that broadcasts to the entire city. And my role as a head of digital content initiatives, I work across at the intersection of curatorial practice, digital strategy, and transformation. And I oversee a team of producers and technologists. And my time is spent exploring how museums and cultural institutions can engage technology. And prior to M+, I was primarily based out of San Francisco, as Jeff mentioned, working at beloved cultural institutions like the Exploratorium and Silicon Valley giants like Samsung. But my passion has always been in storytelling, and what drew me to digital strategy is its potential to connect people, which is becoming more possible yet very complex, as we know. So today I'm thrilled to be joined by Ra and Ryuta in a panel discussion about emergent practices across the region, including what feels urgent, transformative, and generative, especially right now, as well as the power of cross-disciplinary collaboration across regions, how artists, technologists, scientists, and practitioners are actually working together, and what makes these collaborations succeed and fail. And of course, thinking about future infrastructures and funding models and what these shifts mean for artistic autonomy and cultural responsibility. So we'll be hearing first from Ra Smith, who is the head of animatronics at Weta Workshop in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Ra leads a multidisciplinary teams that merge engineering, performance, electronics, and storytelling to bring physically embodied characters to life. His background in dance, design, and Maori cultural frameworks offers a powerful perspective on technology as something that must remain tactile, performative, and culturally grounded, especially within indigenous contexts. And then next, we'll hear from Ryuta Aoki, a Tokyo-based artist and curator whose work probes invisible infrastructures, algorithms, institutions, cognitive systems, and constructs parallel realities that invite us to rethink how societies and technologies evolve. Ryuta's practice moves fluidly between artistic research, exhibition making, and experimental funding models, including his groundbreaking artist scholarship from the Aotearoa Foundation and participation in global cultural policy networks. So without further ado, we'll start with the short presentations from Ra and then Ryuta, followed by a conversation with prepared questions, and then we'll certainly open the floor to you, and you'll be able to submit questions via the SlideGo on your phones, and we'll bring in as many voices into the room as possible. All right, so Ra.
Good afternoon, everyone. All going well? Yeah? So, first of all, thank you to the previous speakers. It was very interesting to hear your thoughts on the various topics that affect us all and the many artists and creators that we work alongside and work with. And I say all that as an excuse as to why I was sitting in my hotel room last night rewriting all of my notes. It's good stuff, I promise. So before we get into that, I just want to acknowledge my brothers and sisters who are indigenous to this land. So, ngā mihi atu kia koutou, ngā mihi atu ki ngā tangata o tēnei whenua atahua, kia ora. So, I'm incredibly grateful to be here with you all, to hear your thoughts, learn about your work, and have the opportunity to contribute to this space and the conversations that we're having. As a result, we are in a space right now where things are changing rapidly. And while we're trying to understand it all and rationalize what we do with it, it's very difficult to be present with that situation because we're still making right now, we're still doing right now, but we're also trying to figure out how do we affect the future? It's a difficult proposition for us to be in because we're all trying to do our best. But because we're individuals, because we come from different cultures, different places, and we have different values, it's very difficult to understand what our priorities are, right? So from my perspective, in my lifetime, I've had a lifetime of involvement in the creative arts. It started very early in my childhood. So I'll explain as briefly as I can my background and how that's led to the work that I do with Weta Workshop. So my journey as a creative person, as I said, has been a lifelong process. In my early years, my development was done in isolation, very compartmentalized self-study and solo practice, but ultimately a deep process of trying to understand myself, my identity, both privately, publicly, and culturally, and how I can contribute to the activities I love the most with interesting and like-minded people. I'm a self-taught artist, a technician with a broad history in various artistic endeavors, including illustration, design, music production and performance, sound design, synthesizer restoration, historical research, street dance, teaching and performing around the world for 7 years, and currently taking position at the creative manufacturing facilities of Weta Workshop. My first loves were illustration and dancing, which kicked off my self-taught journey in the 1980s. Professionally, my first paid work was during my teens, where I took my first steps as a portrait artist, illustrator, and muralist, doing commissioned work in my small hometown in the latter part of the 1990s. During this time, I was increasing my commitment to practicing cultural contemporary dance, of which I studied 3 styles. The first, originating from the west coast of the USA, called popping, another from the same area called locking, and another originating from New York called b-boying, which most of you would know as breakdance. In the 2000s, I moved to Wellington in New Zealand in hopes I would continue my visual arts endeavors, but instead found myself very busy as a dancer. As a dancer, I used the stage name Future. So in 2004, I left New Zealand and moved to Australia and established myself here as Future. So straight away, I'm having this, not an identity crisis, but a search for where I sit on this spectrum of participation. Coming from New Zealand and having Indigenous heritage in a colonial space through the 1980s and through the 1990s as I was going through school, it was a very challenging time to embrace who you are without there being consequences that were particularly unpleasant. And now I find myself in this space where I'm also adopting an identity where I'm not present as myself. I'm becoming this new thing. And that's been quite a theme throughout my artistic journey, basically, is this compartmentalization of task, practice, study, and then application. And I've worked to do those things isolated from each other. So it's very common for myself to be on stage with dancers who don't know that I'm an illustrator, and then work with illustrators who don't know that I'm a musician. It's a very strange proposition, but that's ultimately a result of my upbringing. So as a dancer, my engagement with audiovisual technology was present with my work and practice always. My desire for music making was increasing, and the possibility of being able to shape my creative performances this way forged a new path for me to explore as a musician. My entry point to music was through the use of synthesizers and drum machines. But due to the cost of the equipment, I started with one that worked, and then another, and the rest were either broken or faulty. You know, this is the unfortunate situation of being poor to start with, but then being a struggling artist on top of that. And I'm sure most of you are aware that with the communities that you work with, for the most part, artists are trying to resource a lot of their work themselves, however that comes to be. There's often not the resources or facilities or institutions where everybody can access what they need all of the time. You know, we notice eras of things peaking and then a transitional period where things taper off. It's very difficult, as I'm sure you all know, to keep these things sustained and relevant to everybody that's trying to access those resources. So slowly I learned to play keyboards, program and play drums. I made music with what I had, and I used that music in many of my shows over the next 7 years. To service the equipment out of necessity, I started my journey into electronics. And with this combination of skills and interests, I found myself traveling around the world performing as Future the Dancer, forming strong friendships with other dancers of all disciplines in street dance, contemporary dance, classical dance, sharing stages with them, appearing on TV, magazines, DVDs, and sharing the dances with thousands of students who are also starting on their journey just as I did. I made music under the name Magic and Steel to supplement my shows. I had music licensed for TV and film. And by this time, I'd moved back to New Zealand and started a YouTube channel under the name Mad Fame. With this channel, I helped to teach people how to program synthesizers using methods of sound design, and also researching the deep histories of these machines and the engineers who brought them into existence. The spread of this activity eventually unlocked an opportunity to work at Weta Workshop and resume my identity as Ra, basically. So this full circle moment where all of this activity, all of this creativity, all of this study started to unlock things that I hadn't quite envisioned would be in my future. So I joined the workshop in 2017 in the paint department, working on the live action release of Mulan. This was a brief stint, but very educational. 3 years later, after lockdown, when the restrictions were starting to lift in New Zealand at the end of 2020, I was again fortunate to return to the workshop, this time in the prosthetics department, alongside my friends and colleagues producing hundreds of silicon pieces for creature suits and appliances for special effects makeups. At the workshop, when projects overlap and the work cycles are phasing in and phasing out, us technicians sometimes get the opportunity to work in other departments, which is actually an exciting time because you see the work that goes on in these various departments and their specialties. But when you get to go in there and help, it's a very educational period of time. And so in the animatronics department, there was a lot of soldering to be done, and I was the guy to do it. So I was very pleased with this outcome. And so with that, for the last 6 years of my artistic journey, I've had the privilege and good fortune to work within the walls of Weta Workshop, which is located in the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, in our capital city of Te Whanganui-a-Tara, which is also known as Wellington. So Weta Workshop, if you're not familiar with it, it has nearly 40 years of experience creating award-winning physical effects for film and TV. It also has world-class immersive experiences around the world, tourism attractions, collectibles, and also a range of interactive digital media. Over those decades, through our service and collaboration, this extensive catalog of work has reached millions of people throughout the world. So to give you some context, I'm excited to share with you a little insight into the variety of work we engage in and the various design and manufacturing processes we employ on a daily basis at the workshop. So what you saw there was an overview of Weta Workshop. Its many divisions, departments, creative work, and people. Our pipeline kind of looks like this. All of the physical items that the workshop produces start their journey with our production team, facilitating the work with our clients, which then goes to our design team to conceptualize those discussions and those ideas, and then ultimately and finally to our manufacture division, where these objects become reality. So within the manufacture division, I head the animatronics department. You would have seen some of the mechanical devices in that footage. And so I lead a very small but very talented group of creative problem solvers who specialize in mechanical design, electronics, software development, and animation. Our department works alongside other departments with their respective specialists and generalists, and together we're able to execute the type of work you've just seen. So while this is an artistic and creative process, it's not without its bounds. For us, there are many constraints, the obvious ones being budget and time, but also the needs of our client, their audience, the physical space that these objects will occupy, whether it's on a movie set or in a museum, the aesthetic, whether it's a thing of beauty or shock horror. All of these factors and more will influence our decision-making while we strive to achieve our best in spite of not having the best circumstances to begin with. And I say that deliberately, not as a complaint, but as an acknowledgement of the reality of the work we choose to do because we love to do it. So in regards to manufacture, we focus on methodology. This is where historical, industry, and institutional knowledge and know-how plays a big role in our assessment of solutions, emerging technologies, and whether updated practices will either replace older methods or augment them on a case-by-case basis. The nature of our tools and practices are always being scrutinized because we're subject to the random nature of collaborative possibilities. And so part of the challenge is identifying opportunities to push the limits of what we know, refine what we understand, experiment with what is new or uncommon, or repurpose something in ways so far not considered. These thoughts and actions are all part of our decision-making as we establish our pipeline from beginning to end, while still adhering to our obligations to safety, compliance, and best practice. When we look at the various tools and technologies we use, the same scrutiny is also applied. Adopting new technologies naturally comes with not only an upfront investment in equipment, infrastructure, and training, but for us, the work it produces has to withstand the sometimes unpredictable environments that we expose them to, or the unusual ways in which we apply them. And so with that, an overview of myself as an artist and technician across multiple disciplines, working within a creative company with like-minded and like-skilled people. The impacts of technological, cultural, and generational change are multi-layered, deep, and profound. Listening to the thoughts and stories from our previous speakers, all of you have touched on topics that resonate and relate to my work in a very direct way. I hope this discussion we can unpack some of that and what this new world of possibility and our roles within that may mean for all of us. Thank you.
Wow, it was a great movie, and I found several the movies I really like it, and great. こんにちは皆さん. I'm Ryuta Aoki, and I'm artist and the independent curator based in Tokyo. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people who made this happen, like including Seb and Darius and Anton, especially Sewon, and who bring me here. And a little note, I actually living in Perth when I was a kid, so I really happy to speak my kind of activity. And I work in the space between art and science, and inspired by Joseph Beuys, and his idea is you might know the social sculptor, which shaping the society itself can be form of art. And I'm also the entrepreneur, and I founded my own artistic R&D studio. in Tokyo and co-founded a deep tech company based in the research of the artificial life research with collaborated professor from the University of Tokyo. And also I co-founded a company that manages and produces artists related to Japanese tea ceremony culture, this Japanese tea ceremony culture. But today I like to focus on my work as an artist. And it's quick introduction, but I'll be introducing 3 works today. Let me start with one of my key works, biosculpture. Sorry, this one. Okay, good. As all you might know, a catastrophic disaster, a bushfire in Australia, happened between in 2019 and 2020. The over 24 million hectares burned, and an estimated 3 billion animals are killed and or displaced. I was truly shocked by this. And if left alone, nature would probably recover by or over 1 or several decades, even this size of disaster, but relation itself to its environment. But if it's human who caused this and countless creatures suffers in meantime, even if it's just blinking geological time, I thought, isn't there some kind of band-aid technology we could offer? That was naive, simple question, but also a trigger to start crafting this work. So technology and human-made things in general has always been crafted for human benefit. In Japan, as you might know, there's a culture of offering things or food to the god and revering stones and forest casks as sacred. Starting from this idea of offering, what kind of technology could exist or evolve if we open it or not for human, but for nature ecosystem? Working with the Professor Hiroya Tanaka, who is the father of digital fabrication in Japan, and his laboratory at Keio University, they developed a custom 3D printer that extrudes soils. You see the behind of the mosses, right? The coral reef growth patterns are embedded in the algorithm to shape the sculpture. And 9 species of moss are placed on the surface based on sunlight simulations. It's sculpture that can retain the moisture more than mere soils because it's folded, so the size of the area is larger than the normal in unit of the size. So you see the photo. There's a 3D printer, which you can extend up to this 30 meters. It's quite big, but it's stationary. But my ultimate vision is this something like that. Imagine this printer moving autonomously like a Roomba, and the wandering landscape and dropping a kind of seeds of ecosystem on its own. So a world where technology keeps making offering to the nature without any human interaction. So I would like to realize this final vision here in Australia. Possible, if you know of any research institution or culture organization might be interested, please let me know. Okay, so next one, I'd like to introduce a work related to the Japanese tea ceremony. In 2016, I co-founded an art collective called The Tea Room, dedicated to reinterpreting Japanese tea ceremony traditions through the contemporary technology and cultures. It brings together specialized artisans and artists from this field. Have you ever experienced Japanese tea ceremony before? How many people can? Oh, so many. Oh my God, I didn't know that. So people outside Japan tend to think of the Japanese tea ceremony as simple drinking green tea, matcha. Maybe you guys saw, right? But it's actually total art or form. It's also ritual process. It's a dive into more like higher stage of the human being. So using like technology, which is like old style one. But I will explain a little bit later. Of course, there's no digital technology 405 years ago when the Japanese tea ceremony culture was spread all over Japan. So what developed instead was special technology through architecture and shared spiritual protocols installed your mind, so to speak, that evoke imagine through the language of space and forms. I think this is so without any kind of the explain detail, but we share the common context through that protocol. So I think this is one example of what the people often call high context communication. So various protocols are installed in our mind. Take hike, for example, a single keyword, or in modern terms, a prompt, maybe. I mean, if you use the ChatGPT, you know that. So it invoked vivid image in your head. So that is a kind of haiku. So if you read the haiku, even maybe you're familiar with the haiku, you also train that kind of things. But Japanese people imagine that the size kind of nature or view in your head. So sorry, I forgot to go again. Skip the slides. This is what we're doing. It's not only doing the artwork, also the doing commercial thing too, and also reinterpreting, as I told you, the Japanese tea room with the contemporary technology and the culture, and not only do the tea room, but also the outside of the tea room. For example, you see the right hand in the beach with the tea room too. And yeah, this is my friend, the flower artist, and also belong to our collective and his work. It's not only that things, but they also creating installation too. So so when you visit the Japanese garden, you sometimes find the walls inscribed on stone there. So they describe seeing from distant province, not the place you are standing in. So when you read them, a kind of the VR activate in your mind. So people would enjoy that imagination or use it as a form of the mental discipline. So maybe so many people drink a matcha, so you know the Japanese garden. So, but if you find this kind of, the things, a stone is curving the kind of the word. So the people read the word, imagine like that kind of the image in your head. So how do you explain that one? But this is a kind of Japanese culture. So Japanese tea ceremony is based on these kind of things. So in the tea ceremony, there's a concept called the logi. Sorry, I couldn't find any English version of the explain the Japanese garden. So maybe you can translate it to the with ChatGPT later. So, but anyway, so the blue one is outer. It's called sotoroji in Japanese. In English, the outer garden. The orange one is called the inner garden. So you come from the blue one and then go to the left side, the tea room somewhere. That one, yeah. So then, if you enter into the outer garden, you have to swipe away dust getting from real world. So if you enter, you see the kind of the trees, but you can see the ordinary life. So it's like it's seasonal trees. But if you enter into the inner garden, it's called uchiroji in Japanese. You see the all trees are like the evergreen trees. So they gradually the space gradually give way to like drawing you into spiritual realms. After several steps, you finally reach to the tea room, the top one. It depends on the school of Japanese tea ceremony and design, but this picture shows the top. And you finally, it's small, there is a small entrance, it's called nijiriguchi in Japanese. It's designed so that even the most powerful lord, even the Trump, in general must bow to enter. So it's affordance that stripes away social status. Okay, I didn't mention Trump here. Okay, okay, sorry. And the word of tea ceremony is the tatami room is understood as a microcosm. There's a calligraphy and flowers curated by tea master. That's why it's called the total form, the art, and also the gallery. And within this space, you converse as a higher dimensional beings. Sometimes and host, the tea master and guest didn't talk at all, but the curated object alone carry the message. So the tea ceremony developed during the warring state period. Warring facing death had no need to for unnecessary wars because before they go to the war, they often go to the tea room and drinking a matcha, their conversation with the tea master. Tea master sometimes like, the really best friend, but they didn't talk at all. But they kind of decorated some flower when they are kids, they, play around the park and, taking a kind of flowers. This is a memory and showing the kind of the message in the devoting the or appreciating what they're doing. So, but anyway, this is a kind of how they communicate through the shared context around. So the other tea room, we create works that reinterpret these spiritual protocols through the contemporary technologies. So my work might look a bit contemporary, but if the people from that era could see it, they might actually feel it's quite regression in some way because we rely on too much technology. So at the time, people already installed all the skills in embodied. So it's called, anyway, the Sotology. It's reinterpreting the logi, the outer garden I explained earlier. So this is kind of the passage where consciousness shift, a different form of using a technology. So I take the QR code. QR code is coming from like really commodity technology already. So it's like I thought it's it's good to the to using that kind of technology, and also QR code is an interface between physical and cyberspace. So that I using 100,000 QR code to depict this and the picture. And I'm really grateful to the people. If see the 100,000 QR code, people cannot avoid to scan the. So it shows you we already installed the affordance to the between the evoking the camera if you see the QR code. So this is a kind of new kind of not skill but affordance. So I'm very grateful that I was selected for the Ethereum Foundation first ever art scholarship and exhibit my work at the International Developer Conference DevCon in Bangkok in 2024. So, and also this work is also installed at the Advanced Research Center of the Denso. Denso? Denso is one of the inventor of the QR code. And they are second largest automotive parts supplier. And my new series of the Sotology planned for exhibit around June there. So I'm quite happy. Yeah. So it takes a little bit of time. So my last work is called the Alternative Computations. I presented this January, so just before come to the this great journey. So at the in Tokyo, and as a solo exhibition within the Quantum Art Festival. It starts with single question. When the computation is fixed solely as a tool for efficiency, so what's lost? So the world converges into the single world view, but it wasn't always this way. As you might know, Japan had its own indigenous mathematics called Wasan. It was an Edo period culture alongside haiku and Japanese tea ceremony. Of course, it was used for practical calculation too, but that wasn't all. Beautifully solutions were offered to devoting to the shrine and temples to show the solution. And I should bring the slide, but I forgot. But it's really beautiful. So you please Google or ChatGPT later. And so what I want to say is that computation was not only play, not calculation, play, offering, celebration. So the Wasan is quite advanced at the time. Moreover, like The 17th century Wasan mathematician Seki Takakazu discovered the concept of the determinants 10 years before Leibniz and arrived at Bernoulli's number a year before Jacob Bernoulli did. Wasan had reached a remarkable high-level mathematical development entirely on its own. But during the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century, understanding Western mathematics was necessary to import Western technology. So government introduced Western mathematics into the education system, and Wasan gradually faded away. So the philosophy, you might know, Yukuhoi has proposed a concept called cosmotechnics, the idea that every culture generates its own technological cosmos. So the disappearance of Wasan means exactly that one cosmos was lost. The universe as we know it isn't the only possible. There could have been as many alternative universes as there are cultures. So the gunpowder can become a gun, or it can become a fireworks as well. Drawing Wasan's spirits of celebration, I want to explore the fireworks way of the using technology. So that is the thinking behind this installation. So you see the 28 Sangi. Sangi is a Wasan calculation rods. So orbit overhead as 28 mansions of Eastern Asian cosmology. So this is the heaven. Beneath you little bit see the feet. The four, there is a four, later you see it, but 4.5 tatami mats. So in Japanese ceremony, the tatami mats means the microcosmos. So this is us. So as you might know, the classical computer, let's say the digital computer, originally derived from the musical instruments. With that in mind, I built a musical instrument powered by quantum computer with the technical support from the laboratory Professor Naoki Yamamoto, director of the Quantum Computing Center in Keio University. So at its core is a quantum reservoir computing. It's really technological term, so I don't want to explain to use the time, but quantum noise is a byproduct that mainstream quantum computing try to eliminate as unwanted. So, but it can be, noises can be harnessed as a rich computational resource. This is a quantum, that is a quantum reservoir computing, but you can Google later too. So, wasn't the festive spirit of the finding value in what isn't utilitarian, and the quantum reservoir computing ability turn the discarded into a creative resource. I'm layering these together. Data is fed into the reservoir and fall as an audible rain. You can hear a little bit. It's an experience of the listening to the computation, quantum computation, let's say. Between heaven and earth, and dancer, and you see the dancer, right? The tea master entered. They are not only the performer, they're also the player of this instrument, and also its pilots. The camera capture their gesture, data fed into the quantum reservoir computing, and then rain shift. The ceritorious body move. The body become input, ritual become computation. Offering becomes a feedback loop. So every 28 minutes, one universe and then the another beginnings become quantum noise, a physical, unpredictable, the same universe never appears twice. No, this is not nostalgia for lost tradition. It's a construction of alternative computation that praise, offers, celebrates. Really, it's only 4 days event, and despite it's really short event, and also complicated theme, but over 4,500 people came to see it. I really appreciate it. And the curator traveled from the overseas, especially for this exhibition. So, and new exhibition opportunity are already starting to develop, which is very exciting. So I should quit because I take too much, right? So I want to explain more, what's going on next, because I'm going to organize a new kind of festival themed around this kind of theme, and also hoping up the award, and also developing a space in Tokyo, and hopefully now in New York too. So maybe we can talk later about it after the break. after the talk. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well done.
All right. Thank you so much, Ra and Ryuta, for your presentations, and thank you all. To begin the conversation bit, I'd like to invite each of you to reflect on a simple question. In your region and in your practice, what new creative practices with technology feel the most powerful or urgent right now?
Can you hear my voice?
Of course.
Okay, great. It syncs in real time, so I couldn't hear my voice louder, but it's okay. But quantum computing, let's say, it's a kind of trend all over the world, and also the Japan is technological landscape. We really delay for the AI development. So the government and the company really invest a lot of money to the quantum computing development right now. So that was the one of the theme. Everybody goes to one solution, only efficiency. So why don't we celebrate other things around the culture? Like why don't we the other mentioned earlier that the gunpowder can be a weapon and else become also the fireworks. I want to explore the fireworks technology. Yeah.
Quantum technology. Great. Ra, what about you?
I guess the expectation would be AI, of course, for us, but not specifically us. As I mentioned before, my background in various different art forms, maybe except for dancing, but maybe. It'll have impacts, and like Ryuta says, as artists, we can choose which we choose to engage in and to what capacity we want to utilize it and for what purposes. So we're very much in the midst of that, and it's happened in the past many times, especially in the arts. Speaking from my background with synthesizers, institutionally, and I guess the many audiences of the time when synthesizers first came onto the scene, they were not welcome. It was seen as a technology that was going to dehumanize music. It was going to remove the musician from the sounds that are being produced. But as we know, that's not the case anymore. But it's taken time and application for that to be true, or for at least for us to accept it. The same is true in the film industry with CGI. When that first came on, it meant the beginning of a transitional phase from what we used to do to what we are going to do. And sometimes these things remain. For example, I run a team doing animatronics, which is a very old style of practical effects for film, which is having a second run, and it's exciting because generationally, the kids that watch those films with practical effects are today's directors. And when they get the opportunity to make films that they love, they want to do it in the way that they experienced it as kids watching these films. So we will go through these cycles, and we will find ways to be productive with the new technology. And of course, there will be people that will find ways to be less productive with those technologies. So it's a matter of choice, but this is why we have these discussions at these points in time.
Thanks so much. And I mean, it's interesting to think about CGI technology, kind of its parallels to how AI is sort of, emergent and very much present in all of our practices right now. I'm curious about kind of your thinking process as you bring new technology or tools into your creative practice. How do you decide what to use?
I'll go briefly. As I mentioned in my piece, time and budget are almost always at the top, whether we like it or not. As artists, we want to think broad and we want to do anything. We want to be able to achieve and do anything ultimately. But you know, as a struggling artist I've been in the past, I know that that's not possible. You have to be patient, you have to be diligent, and sometimes you have to take the long road and work really, really hard doing it the difficult way to achieve what you want. I'm sure you know this as well. But yeah, there are opportunities there when you have access. You know, 25 years ago when I wanted to make music, I couldn't afford it. The computers at the time generally couldn't handle the processing that was required if I just wanted the computer to do all of it. And so, you know, a recording studio 25 years ago would have had a whole bunch of hardware and some software that was going to struggle to capture all of that audio. Whereas now you can do it on your phone, you know. It's great. But yeah, these are the paradigms that we deal with. It's a matter of application and opportunity, really.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So let's relate to the last talk. Maybe deadline is a powerful technology to people.
It's very motivating.
Yeah, I was, you know, even making a slide or for this exhibition, I mean, conference, and also I just explained my work, but I organized exhibition conference, international conference too. So the people doesn't work before the deadline comes up. So right. So the member deadline forces you to choose which technology you have to choose.
Let me deepen that question a little bit more. How do you, when you bring in kind of new tools or technology into your work, how do you make sure the work stays human?
It's a great question. For us, speaking in terms of the work I do at Weta Workshop, the whole process is a very human process. It begins with an idea from a person who then makes contact with us, or we make contact with them, and we have a discussion as people, as creatives, to figure out how we do it. It's a very collaborative process, very much you know, taking a village to do the work and produce this new thing that didn't exist before. The tools we choose to do that, you know, in reference to what I said about the synthesizer, the tool shouldn't define whether we are omitted from that process as having a human input. You know, it's still us using a tool, and time and maybe, you know, generations from now is what it will take for that understanding to change. But because we're right here, right now, and things are new, it's not always clear what proportion of effort and input is human and how much the tool that we're using now is taking over. And I think we're just trying to understand that, which is why we have these questions. We don't know where we end and where the tool is taking over for us, especially these days. So, but I believe ultimately, you know, we were having lunch yesterday, and I grabbed a knife. And I said, the knife on the table is nothing. But once I grab it and choose what to do with it, whether it's good or bad, then its potential is realized. And the same with all of these tools, AI included. So we must always be aware that we're driving still. You know, and AI is tentative. I think there's a weird situation where we have this question of autonomy. And so while I say that, I'm not entirely confident that that's still the truth, but I hope it is. Yeah.
Yeah, what makes the people change with the technology?
Yeah, what makes it deeply human, like, for example, like whether it's tactile, emotional, culturally rooted, you know, so that it doesn't feel so disconnected.
Yeah, for me, like the technology is kind of make possible which I cannot do it by myself, because I have, for example, it's maybe I have to see technology positively, but because, for example, I couldn't draw the painting without any technology. Maybe this is kind of the disability, let's say. I don't good at the control my bodies precisely, but technology can support it. It's not only that things, and also censoring the world, the changing, or the world, how say like the temperature, well, not only the like kind of weather things, but also the result of the calculation. It's a one of the sensor, right? So you see the more world clearly. So the thing is we should train ourselves is how the software in your body, in your mind, how to control, how to use it ethically. So that is a kind of the human being today were required, I think.
Thanks so much, Ryuta and Ra. I think building upon that theme and kind of going to the topics that we were kind of discussing together yesterday, I found that both of you kind of have worked in robotics and still continue to explore it. And we do have a question from the audience around animatronics. And so I'll actually start to incorporate the questions from the audience. We have some really great ones that are really interesting and funny. I'll maybe share these later with you both.
Let's do it
or
now.
now to everybody.
Let's just go for it. Yeah. Let's do it now.
But so how do you manage the issue of uncanny valley effects, with animatronic figures? Like how far do you think we are from hyper-realistic animatronics? And maybe Ryuta, I know you didn't get to talk about your robotics work quite a lot, but maybe you can also touch upon it too.
Please.
Yeah, so maybe Ra first.
For us, it's very difficult because we, as a collective group of people at the workshop, we all come from different disciplines. For me, in my illustration background, I spent a lot of time studying anatomy and going through classical paths of training, not institutional paths, but just self-guided learning based on what I thought was required for me to be good at what I wanted to do. And so with that understanding, when we build a mechanism, put a silicon skin on it, dress it, and then animate it, you realize the depth of those layers and how they all contribute to what we understand as the presence of human life, even just as a performance. And it's challenging. It is so challenging because we have multiple disciplines that all have that one problem to overcome in their respective way. So the sculptor has to sculpt to such a resolution that we will believe that it's human skin, for example. And then the animator has to animate in a way that it looks like human movement. But we have to build the mechanism to be able to even do that in the first place. And when you look at the mechanism, it doesn't look anatomically correct. It's constrained by the shape of the servos and the linkages that have to be the way they are in order to give us those movements as best as we can. So with that in mind, we already have limits. We'll never get perfection. But as we know through Kermit the Frog, let's say, that's a guy's hand in a sock, essentially. Done very well, but we don't care. We don't care that it's not perfect because the character of Kermit the Frog is Kermit the Frog, and we love him. And so we have to learn to embrace that part of this question, which is, are we aiming for hyperrealism for the purpose of aiming for hyperrealism? Or are we trying to tell stories with endearing characters and maybe there's some room for us to fail elegantly, intentionally? And so we work within those two spaces because, of course, we have clients that want this, want that, and then we have our own part in deciding that path. So it's a very challenging question because it's a technical one, and it's one that that really digs into our psyche. As audience members and observers, when there's a representation of us, we expect certain things on a very deep level, and when they're not present, it gets a bit weird. So it's a very difficult challenge that we have when we're making robots that are meant to, in some way or another, capture human life. Yeah, and we're still figuring it out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a matter of the time to get used to it. As a little bit mentioned about it, because maybe you remember you saw the animation, you saw really weird, face, the eyes so big, and the maybe nose, there's no nose, but everybody get used to it and appreciate it, enjoy it, right? So there's not much, robot yet, which is weird things, a lot of around you. So if become like 1 million robot around the weird one, it's gonna be more get used to it. So people, human being like that, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because even in, say, like more of the customer experience space, one of the biggest kind of things that they've discovered is that the more transparent they are about a chatbot being a chatbot, the more receptive people are to engaging with that chatbot appropriately. They don't want a pretend scenario where they think that they're speaking with a human and it turns out to be a chatbot. So it's quite interesting how that kind of non-humanness can actually retain that sense of interactivity.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of taste too, which, when you're a part of the generation where this new thing appears, you have to react in real time to it, whereas, your children and your children's children will just grow up with it, and it'll be a different context for them and how it exists in their lives. So it's a strange time.
Yeah. So Ryuta and Ra, there are so many questions actually about collaboration. So maybe I'll shift a bit to that because both of you obviously build really strong teams and have these collaborations across some very different worlds. Everything from like scientists and engineers to performers and coders. Traditional knowledge with indigenous ways of thinking about the world. Can you share a bit about your approach to these collaborations and anything that sort of surprised you about them? Ryuta, maybe we'll start with you first.
Surprised me.
Yeah, about collaborations.
Collaboration. Oh, through the collaboration. I always surprised because they have the knowledge, a skill which I don't have. So that was most inspiring thing. And the art practices is good for a medium to collaborate with other field people from other field, because I don't want to say like the art, okay to fail, but the people like business people really hate do the failure thing, right? But I sometimes collaborate with the people from the business industry, like the tech, or not only the tech, like marketing or creative agency. Anyway, but they really become really open, and because they suppressed by the boss. If they're open, they're gonna be unleash their creativity, and I'm surprised what they're creating all the time. They really have a good skills. Only the matter is they belong to the network which suppress yourself. So so how do re-editing the network and the art practices is a good solution for that, I think.
I feel the same. I've experienced that too. Yeah. Of course, in different contexts and for different reasons, but very much the same thing. We naturally want to express ourselves in a very human way, and unfortunately, we are naturally conditioned to live regimented lifestyles for the sake of survival, in a modern sense. And so, having opportunities to break out of that framework and re-engage with yourself and with others in a very natural and creative way can be surprising when you see someone doing that for the first time in a long time, because we do it all the time, So it's a very wonderful experience to see that happening for someone, definitely.
In talk of collaborations and survival, there are a number of questions in regards to what makes your work possible. So funding or scale of investment, is it universities? How do you make this work happen? And I know from both of your backgrounds, there are there have certainly been some interesting new funding paths, as well as, I'm sure, collaborations with clients. So I'd love to hear a bit more about how you are navigating that currently.
Yes. As you might know, in Japan, the funding system is sucks. So they don't give us money at all. So we have to survive and have to make some structure to survive. So for me, it's like did I mention? But I'm an engineer, so I create things for the sometimes company or like, but it's not really kind of business kind of solution, but more creative one. And I try to drawing on my thing, what I want. So to convince them, this is a good. And why it's so sometimes I make it like I don't know English, like a resource human training things for the organization. So they found like stimulating researcher. Researcher always sometimes they focusing on one theme. So why don't we broader take them in the one silo to another through the creating artworks? And they maybe the business people, I don't know how many people here, but they know the how much money goes into the training the human skill set as a company. So I try to create that kind of structure or program for them. Sometimes, yes.
And maybe to expand on that for Ra, how do you balance kind of this maybe constant need for output for clients or external pressures with kind of the creative vision that your team has?
You get used to the pace, and you get used to the rhythm of working in that way. It's and it's not a problem either, to be honest. It's just the nature of the work. So for all of us, we're highly stimulated to work at that pace. We do a lot of rapid prototyping because, of course, time and budget is critical. And we want to preserve as much time for the actual manufacture of the final design before it's released to the client. And that can take, as you saw in the video, there's a lot of different types of objects, everything from a costume to a prop to a giant sculpture to a robot to something else. It's a very broad set of problem solving that we use the same approach in terms of our work ethic, I guess you could say, and work effort to get these things done. It is challenging because it is an impact on our life energy as people. You know, we're working very hard, and in some cases, we're not just repeating processes that we know, we're inventing every single time something new because the problems that we get are random. You know, this person wants this and this person wants that. And we've never done those things before, but we can see through their vision, through discussion, how we may get there. And so it's a challenging proposition to be able to work that way. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question properly, but that's essentially the nature of that situation for us. Yeah.
I think there are some specific questions for each of you from the audience that I'll bring in now. Maybe I'll continue with Ra. How does Weta deal with AI-generated concept art created quickly and in large volumes? And what does this mean for your concept artists and designers?
I guess in the same vein, say for example, I'm a traditional painter illustrator. I use pencil and paper, paint and canvas, and I spend a lot of time understanding the processes and methods to do that by hand. And now I'm alongside someone who doesn't need to know those things because digitally they can push and shove those pixels until it looks right. They don't need to get it right straight away. And so I live in that world where I'm this guy doing it the old way and this person's doing it that way, and we both work in the same space. Their work is as valid as my work. They're just using a different tool. Their tool may offer efficiency, the ability to iterate many, many, many more times than I can, purchasing 100 canvases and trying to paint one at a time by hand. It just makes sense. And so AI in that space, I think, is the same thing. It's the next person who maybe couldn't do what I do, maybe can't do what this guy does, but is just as effective for other reasons using this new tool. Does it displace some people? Probably, naturally. Other tools have displaced other people as well. 3D printing, for example, we use that every day, we understand it, and there is a space for it. It makes sense. But like I was saying earlier, AI seems to encompass so much of everything that we do, not just the creative tasks. And so we have this concern generally of it replacing us generally, just replacing us as people. I hope that's not the case, but definitely in the workspaces when it comes to creative endeavors, I think we'll be able to contain it to a degree. Really depends on your protocols within the spaces that you work and the people that you work with. Some places will be able to validate it, and others maybe might have some gray areas. Kind of like when you go to the supermarket and you want organic food. Do we know? It says so, but do we know? I think we're going to be in that weird sort of liminal space for a period of time until we figure it out.
Thank you. And Ryuta, there's a question for you as well. And I think this might be related to the sort of the gunpowder material that you mentioned, and also kind of reminds you of the Ars Electronica theme from this past year of panic and sort of what's happening in the world currently. But can you expand about the weaponization of technology and the role of the creative community to warn society of the dark side of technology or AI?
It's really good question. But anyway, you should use the technology and the sharing the what you feel and what was the benefit and demerit with the others. And dialogue is so important. And we are really network-based being. So one experience and sharing the experience, what you feel, and then it's affected others' brain, and maybe they evolve their image and the new ideas comes out. So yeah, creating the kind of community which you can easily to share. That was a really good approach to understand how the technology impact our society.
Thanks so much. So we are running out of time, and there are so many great questions, but I think we'll have to take a pause here. Maybe Ra and Ryuta, if you have any final words that you want to say in 10 seconds, I think we might have 10 seconds for you each.
If you want to chat some more, I'll be out there. So I look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention. I'm exhibiting my artwork in next June in Science Gallery, Melbourne. Did I say okay, that one? Okay, great. For more detail, curator T is here, so please ask her. And the opening will be 5th of the June or something like that. So we can meet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Huge thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you so much, Seb Chan, Darius, Anton, Jeff, and the entire ACMI team, and of course, all of you. Looking forward to the rest of the discussions. There was an important marriage proposal for both Ryuta and Ra, as well as a request for Ra to bust a move in case he wants to do that out of the stage. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.